So I mentioned at the end of my last video that I'd forgotten something important and that I'd make a follow-up video to address it. Well, that kind of became this whole thing. See, I'd forgotten to talk about Rory's secret stone and what the placement meant for his character, but then I realised that a similar reading could be done for the Sage's stones as well, and after looking around YouTube and realising the only real material on them was either cutscenes or some weird theory videos, I decided to make a thing of it. So here it is. An analysis on how the placement of the stones matches their owners' personalities. And obviously, spoilers ahead. Also, while the new sages all wear their stones in the same place and style as the original sages, the first sages are basically non-entities with no personality and are mostly there to strengthen the theme of inherited duty and tragedy, so I'm leaving them out of the discussion this time. Okay? Okay. So with that out of the way, I want to start with the youngest of the sages, partially for thematic reasons, mostly because his is the first temple I did. Tulin is the son of Tiba, Rivali's descendant who helped us access Vah Meadow in Breath of the Wild, and is also the Wind Sage. Tulin wears his secret stone around his ankle, which I imagine would be a little annoying since he'd feel it shift every time he takes a step, but that's not really relevant. What's important is that, in this way, Tulin's stone is always visible, just like Yunobo, as both men feel they need to prove themselves to the world. Like I said, Tulin is the youngest sage, and in a way, he's also the least mature. Tulin feels the need to prove himself, endangering both himself and others when he tries to go to learn. He insists he can do things alone, rushing headlong into danger without considering the consequences, and he's eventually forced to learn that relying on others doesn't make him immature or weak, because what's truly childish is refusing help out of a sense of pride. As I said before, his stone is always visible, especially when fighting, since the Rito fire bows with their feet. In a way, it becomes both a mark of maturity and a status symbol, reminding him of his duty while announcing to all around that he is the Wind Sage and therefore is worthy of their respect. Tulin obviously has a lot more growing to do, but he's on the right track, putting his best foot forward. This is even reflected in his loaned ability, pushing you forward as you fly and helping you to go even further. Returning from the last game, Riju has grown more into her role as a leader of the Gerudo and has been promoted from Helmet Wearer to Source of God's Wrath. And as the descendant of both Urbosa and the Sage of Lightning, she has some pretty high heels to fill. Riju wears her sacred stone as an earring, and that has to be a little distracting too, shifting every time she moves her head or stands in the wind. Then again, I believe that may well be the point. Riju is the second youngest sage, and age-wise, is at most in her early teens. Consequently, and as a result of her status as Gerudo Chief, she's been forced to mature quickly, even more so than other Gerudo do, and the placement of her stone reflects this. The Gerudo in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom wear earrings from a young age, starting with simple, smaller piercings as children and replacing them with larger, danglier ones as they grow. Riju, however, is without earrings for all of Breath of the Wild, which is a stark contrast to Urbosa, who had the biggest and dangliest earrings of them all. Riju, while a wise ruler and a skilled warrior, is not without her own insecurities. She hides her love of seal plushies, and it's hinted that she may feel like she doesn't live up to her ancestors' legacy, especially in the first game when she requires Urbosa's helmet to assist Link in reaching Vah Naboris. Come Tears of the Kingdom though, she's obviously matured, growing not only physically, but in power as well, now able to generate her own lightning, just as Urbosa could, and potentially even stronger. However, she still struggles with control and therefore relies on Link to help guide her, showing remarkable adaptability and wisdom, which makes sense because she's a Sage of Lightning, the element that requires the most control of all. Lightning is wild and dangerous, as destructive as it is useful. It can smite her enemies and destroy objects, but it can also cause fires and harm innocents if she's not careful, her bolts being capable of blasting rocks to bits, and it's because of this need for awareness that she wears her stone as she does. Placed next to her head, Riju would be constantly aware of its movement, which would always serve as a reminder of not only her power but her duty as well, as both a sage and a chief. Additionally, its design echoes the earrings Urbosa wore, symbolizing how she's bridging the gap between her own abilities and those of the legacies she feels she has to live up to. Unlike Tulin, her stone isn't meant to display her status and power, nor to demand the respect of others. It's a reminder of what she has to do, and reassure her of how far she's already come. I feel like I barely have to describe Sidon, everyone knows about him. His engagement was the most contentious story choice in the game, and millions mourned the loss of our big sharky boyfriend. Setting Nintendo's burning of 1,000 ships aside, let's discuss the newly crowned King of the Zora. Sidon wears his Zonai stone on the back of his left hand, and at first glance this appears to be nothing more than a cheeky acknowledgement of his signature pose, but there's a bit more to it than that. Precisely 40 words ago, I mentioned Sidon being the new Zora King, and that's an important detail to note when considering the stone's placement. Back in Breath of the Wild, Sidon served the unique role of being the only modern warrior not simply descended from a divine hero, but sharing a direct familial bond with one. He's also the only modern-day warrior who knew Link before he was fridged for 100 years and, in what's becoming a repeating theme, he directly inherits the role of aiding Link from Mipha, just as he inherits the role of king from his father, and his stone is set to remind him of this. Similarly to Raru's, Sidon's stone is set on the back of his hand, in a place that, while not always visible to others, will always be visible to him. Whether fighting or swimming or holding another person's hand, his stone, while never getting in the way, will always remind him of what and who he fights for. And he fights a lot, constantly inheriting battles from those who came before him. He's left to aid Link when Mipha dies, and he's left the responsibility to defeat the Demon King by the original Sage of Water, as well as the responsibilities of a king from his father. Each time, Sidon takes these into his own hands, shouldering an increasingly large burden that could crush a person. Luckily, Sidon is a resilient man, able and willing to do whatever it takes to save those he cares about. While he may not possess the healing powers of his sister, Sidon is no less kind, and his power serves to protect you, cloaking you in a barrier of water that can be used to clear dangers. His stone is placed on his hand, not simply as a reminder of responsibility, but because he is a man who shares his incredible strength with others, taking matters into his own hands and forging a path forward for the good of everyone. I'll be honest, Yunobo stumped me at first. Formerly a klutzy and nervous wreck, Yunobo has changed for the better between games, though you only really see it after you break his stupid luchador mask and stop him from what is essentially pushing drugs. But honestly, it didn't feel like there was a lot to grab onto. Also repeating his role from the last game, Yunobo serves to help you traverse Death Mountain and gain access to the Fire Temple. He even reprises his role as Cannonball, helping you smash through rocks, walls, rock walls, enemies, and enemy rocks. And as the new Sage of Fire, he wears his Zonai stone as a belt, which didn't make a lot of sense at first, but then it hit me. The meaning is in the design of the belt, not just what it is and where it's located like the others. Visually, Yunobo's belt is reminiscent of a Shimenawa, or enclosing rope. Ropes made of rice straw or hemp for ritual purification in the Shinto religion. To greatly simplify, Shimenawa are believed to ward against evil spirits, and spaces bound by them are believed to be sacred or ritually pure, and these things together fit Yunobo really well. First point, warding. Yunobo inherited Daruk's protection, a perfect omnidirectional defense that can stop any incoming danger, physical or magical. It's also strong enough to allow him to be fired from a cannon at the divine beast Vavrudanya and come away completely unscathed, if a little dizzy. Point the second, purification. Across numerous cultures, belief systems, and even in alchemy, fire is seen as a cleansing force, something that burns away impurity, and Yunobo is the Sage of Fire. Interestingly, both points 1 and 2 come into play during the Fire Sage segment of the regional Phenomena questline. I made a joke about drugs, but the marbled rock roast really does seem allegorical, an addictive substance that consumes the user with uncontrollable desire to ingest more, changing their personality and making them darker and more violent when they lose access to it. Possession is sometimes used as a comparison for drug addiction, as it can twist people into something wholly unrecognizable, a poison that kills the soul and eliminates who they used to be. While it's technically possible to defeat the other temple bosses without the Sage's power if you have the resources for it, you require Yunobo to kill the marbled Goma, as only his rollout attack can unbalance and weaken it. And upon killing it, its corrupting influence is completely wiped away, blowing from the Goron's bodies like so much choking smog. In a way, you require Yunobo's fire to purify the taint cursing Death Mountain. Third, and this is way less deep, Shimenawa are sometimes worn by sumo wrestlers for ceremonies, and it could be seen as a fun little wink to audience about the weird sumo plotline in Twilight Princess. Finally, it may symbolize Yunobo's desire to protect people, his willingness to follow you into the darkness for the sake of Hyrule. It's something to think about, I suppose. I honestly didn't find Yunobo all that engaging, but that doesn't mean any less work was put into him, or the design and placement of his Zonai stone. 4 sages down, 5 stones to go. Thankfully the rest are fairly straightforward, so we can get through them pretty quickly. As the founding Queen of Hyrule, Sonia was gifted her Zonai stone by her husband Raru, which she wears as a necklace. Zelda also wears hers as a necklace, but the difference between them is notable. Zelda's appears to be more of a choker, a tighter fit that suits her more anxious nature, as it's less likely to fall or move as much as Sonia's. Sonia's, on the other hand, is far more decorative. It has larger, looser pieces and small teardrop gemstones. It also hangs over her heart, which leads me to believe that she wears her Zonai stone as something of a betrothal necklace, a symbol of her love for Rauru. Likewise, she also acts as Zelda's mentor in time magic, which may have influenced Zelda to honour her by copying her way of wearing her stone, just in a more Zelda way. Rounding out the last of our sages, Mineru wears her stone in two bodies, though it remains in the same place both times. Being a more pragmatic and tech-savvy soul, Mineru wears her stone in a sort of armoured necklace, which is far more secure than Zelda or Sonia's. Her golem body keeps her stone in the same approximate place as well, though it can be hard to see due to its lack of neck. Finally, it reflects her role in the story. Mineru's unique power as the sage's spirit allows her to separate her soul from her body, which some believe resides in the heart. Placed over her chest, it would naturally allow easier traversal to and from her body. Simple, straightforward, and practical. That's Mineru. The Demon King, the King of Thieves, the King of the Gerudo. Ganondorf takes what he wants. Treasure, power, even lives. In my video on Rauru, I talked about how the two kings are designed to contrast each other, and the placement of his stone is no exception. Ganondorf murders Sonia and takes her stone, stealing from Rauru both his wife and the symbol of their bond in one fell swoop. Worse still, the placement of his stone taunts Rauru, attaching itself to Ganondorf's forehead in the form of a crown, ensuring that whenever he looks at Ganondorf, he's always confronted with a cruel reality thrust upon him. What's interesting is that, while Rauru's third eye and horns give him the appearance of wearing a crown, the look of a natural king, the Demon King also grows horns, a dark reflection of Rauru's own appearance. To the end, Ganondorf exists to oppose Rauru in all ways, taking where Rauru gives and granting himself the artificial symbols of royalty that Rauru naturally possesses. It's really quite brilliant visual storytelling, and it suits the Demon King in every way. And thus does the circle close. The founding king of Hyrule, the reason this video even exists. Rauru wears his Zonai stone as a bracelet on his right wrist, which is absolutely his dominant hand, as it's the one he strokes his chin with when thinking and the one he used to seal Ganondorf. As I said earlier, he shares the placement of his stone with Sidon, but the key difference here is in how it's fixed in place. Sidon's stone is essentially sewn into his garment, meaning that it doesn't move, but Rauru's is looser, shifting whenever he moves his hand or takes a step or performs any action. While this could be read as another instance of movement being a reminder of duty, I don't think it's the case here. Aside from Mineru, Rauru is the only person in the story who grew up with a Zonai stone, something constantly kept in one's person. I believe this freer movement is indicative of how natural it must be for him. Just as his design coats him as a natural king, the increased power must feel like it comes naturally as well. Rauru's greatest weakness was his overconfidence, something that comes naturally to those who are powerful, and Rauru is powerful, naturally gifted with divine magic that dispels evil. Rauru's stone is the very first we see, still connected to his arm as it holds dehydrated Ganondorf aloft. That same stone was used to protect his kingdom and travelled back in time with Zelda, drawing a close to the circle that is their conflict with Ganondorf. Ultimately, Rauru's stone is both the first and final found, just as Rauru is the first person we meet upon waking in the sky and the last person we see as the final battle concludes. Guarding and protecting, Rauru's stone, like the man himself, is perfectly placed to aid us when we need him the most. Thank you for watching and listening to me go completely insane. It was fun to make this, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this kind of content, consider leaving a like and subscribing, it would really help me out. I hope you had a good time, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video for something completely different. Bye!